Hi, everybody, and welcome to our follow-up town hall to continue a discussion between our students and our administration about racial injustice and what UHCL is doing to create a change. SGA is grateful to be able to provide a safe space to reflect and discuss the university's plan going forward. I'm thankful to be able to facilitate this dialogue and to be a part of this change. This town hall is structured with two main components. SGA has curated a list of questions based off of the concerns mentioned in the previous town hall. The first hour will be moderated by Dr. Lisa Jones, who will be asking questions from the list. The next hour will be dedicated towards an open forum where students will have the opportunity to ask their questions and receive a live response from administrators. For those of you who are joining us on Instagram Live, after the 1 hour mark, we will be taking a 2-minute break where you will be disconnected, but we'll be back on immediately after. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to Dr. Blake to begin her opening remarks.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
I'd
morning.
like to take a moment to contextualize our collective purpose here. And what I mean by that is that of the faculty, the staff, and the administration, and why we serve in the public higher education, and our vision, what our vision is for hope for the future. You, the students, are why we in our roles exist. You represent our hope for and our path to a better future, a better world. What we do is always our attempt to improve access, growth, and development and opportunity for you. Sometimes we may miss the mark, but please know that was and is never our intention. We want you to receive our best in order to pursue and achieve your best. History, of which recent deaths of Blacks and Latinx, the plummeting of Asians, and the disturbing characterizations of working class people are a critical part of that history. They let us know that strictly promoting equality is not a total remedy for the racial and ethnic ills of our country. We must produce equity opportunities to correct inequalities that have been systemically embedded in our society and socialized in all of us. As a result, we have to work harder, more intentionally, and listen sensitively to developing effective ways to align our actions with the outcomes we believe will be most effective. Please, never question our sincerity and commitment to effecting meaningful outcomes to increase equity and equality. We want a better world for you and for us. We do understand your frustration with our seeming ineptness in some of our first actions and strategies. But 2 points I'll make on these. The first is they were our first, not our last. We intend to work for the long haul for the transformation that is needed. Secondly, this is why we need your input to work with you. What we, faculty, staff, and administrators believe will work may at times be off the mark. So let's get started with our second town hall.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blake. So now I think we can begin the discussions. Dr. Jones, if you want to start by asking the first question.
Good morning, everyone. I am so glad that you are able to join us, and it's an honor for me to moderate this part of the town hall. So the first question is for Dr. Blake. In the last town hall, you mentioned a financial literacy course being put in place to help students. How do the financial literacy courses directly relate to helping protect Black lives in the current racially charged climate?
Okay, firstly, protecting Black lives or that's not something that they're intended to directly do, okay? If you remember, I asked each of my VPs and also the faculty senate leadership to give me a first action, okay? First action from our admin and finance VP was about resources, in this regard, money, okay? What I am going to explain to you is I've done some research on that to be more succinct, to be helpful about it, is to give you a sense of where financial literacy fits into improving the conditions, equity and equality for Black students and people overall, and then also others that we care about. So I've done some reading about this, and I could quote the conflicting findings from a number of regression analyses on the why of Black-white wealth gap, which is said to be about tenfold. Some of the studies state that it is about tenfold. Some say that it is the outcome of wealth disparity. Others say it's the outcome of income disparity. But there's one important statement that I think is important for us to recognize if we're focusing on, again, transforming the society and creating greater opportunity and recognition of the value of all of us in the society. And that this is pervasive, and I'm going to quote something that I read. The knowledge and skills to manage money effectively supports your life and career goals. In other words, money touches all areas of life, okay? So if we look at financial literacy, like all types of literacy, it's important for you to accomplish, and it is important for you to accomplish your goals, be they short or long term. It can help transform our lives. Okay, when we look at it, let's look at it in the larger frame. It's not just about money. It's about managing money well, having the skill to manage money well, and that's for all students, okay? But again, I cited a tenfold wealth gap for income issues. If you want to be an entrepreneur, that's what we're trying to give you an opportunity to become here. Anything you want, an entrepreneur, an innovator, a lawyer, a faculty member, a small business person. Your goals for those are going to be related to your ability to manage your resources, and money is one of them. That's why I believe it's important, and I understand why Mr. Denny made that his first actionable item as one of my co-leaders. And I'm finished.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Blake. This question too is for Mr. Denny. In the previous town hall, you were quoted as mentioning that the university is implementing several initiatives to be able to give students a voice on how they can hold public institutions accountable for the resources they give to the institutions. Can you provide a few examples in detail of these initiatives and what has been done since the last town hall? Again, quoting, to land on the one that's going to be the most effective.
Certainly. The first piece of any public institution, and I guess I'll start with saying, yes, we have very specific initiatives, but it's really more a function of modeling every single day that we are going to hold ourselves to the standards of how a public institution responds to its constituents. And then by modeling that, we set the example for all of our campus community, our students, our staff, our faculty, when they engage with other public institutions to hold those other institutions to the model that we set. And I think the first demonstration of any public institution is that it recognizes that the sole reason why it exists is to deliver a service to those constituents of that institution. So certainly as a public higher education institution, we are here to help our students achieve their goals in life directly with an academic degree, but also with all of the other skills and tools that are necessary, like the president just discussed with financial literacy, to reach your goals and that better life that we believe higher education promises. In that delivery, it's important to recognize that when we are questioned or asked for information from our constituents, how do we respond to that? Do we provide that information in a way that is clear, or do we say, never mind, we're getting that done, it's for your best interest? And those are the type of things where we try to demonstrate and model that we are open, engaged, and transparent. And one of the things I just want to say briefly about transparency, if I publish our entire financial documents, but in a manner that it's only clear to those people that are deeply steeped into the specific and the complexities of public higher education, and specifically public higher education in the state of Texas, then I have absolutely not been transparent at all. I have put out volumes of information, but with no clarity, and therefore it is of use to no one. So some of the things that we are doing very specific is we have been working very hard since the time I got here, which is approaching 2 years now, to create simple systems so that we can display our financial information in ways that the layman will understand. Not because the layman is not up to the speed of understanding it, but because the state of Texas has intentionally or unintentionally made it very complex in how they manage and how they report and categorize their financial reporting for public higher education. And we have had to work, and we're still working, and we have not completed that to my satisfaction, an ability to translate that into a clear and direct, straightforward way that makes sense to how we all as laymen think about the operations of the university. And then if the numbers follow in that format, then they will make sense. So that's one of our specific tasks, is working on very simple reporting of our financial data, okay? Some other things that we're doing is that we have engagement meetings. We have our shared governance process that absolutely includes our student engagement and participation in those meetings. We publicly announce when those meetings are held. We publicly post who are the members of those meetings and what are the objectives of those meetings. We publicly post the agendas of those meetings, and we publicly post the outcomes, the minutes of those meetings, and the decisions that are pushed forward in those meetings. Those are all things that anybody should expect of a public institution to do. Additional things that we at Houston Clear Lake do, and I don't know that they're necessarily things that you would expect of, say, your city town hall and so forth, is that we reach out to our constituents and participate in their events to demonstrate that what we recognize is the first and most important step is that we have the relationship with our constituents, so that then we know what services are requested and desired, so that then we can deliver those. Examples of that will be, obviously, it began last year with our SGA president, that I had periodic meetings with the SGA Executive Council, and I've already reached out to Ms. Loya to begin those for this year, to understand what are the objectives and goals of our SGA leadership, and how can we as the university administration facilitate the successful achievement of those goals. Other things that we have done is that we initiated for all of our auxiliary operations, that is, we have the Rec and Wellness Center, Hunter Residence Hall, Student Life. We already had, for those 3 auxiliary operations, clear and engaged student advisory councils, where students were the primary driver in how those auxiliary operations functioned and what services they delivered. We added a student advisory council for dining facilities, for parking and transportation, and for our campus bookstore, things that we did not have in the past, and how those facilities operated were primarily staff and faculty driven, and we have shifted since I've come here to the campus, and they are now focused on student service delivery and are driven by those student advisory councils that we stood up last year, and are now restaffing and getting students to engage as we roll into a new year for those students that graduated and have moved off of those committees, making sure that they're repopulated with students to participate in those committees and therefore set the agenda for those auxiliary operations in what services and how they deliver services to our students. And then the final thing is myself and many of my staff have the task this year of being regular participants at the SGA meetings. Whether you're on the agenda or not, we are going to try to be there on a regular basis because it is important. You never know what conversations come up that we can hear and then allow us to better inform the decisions and actions that we take, but also that we can be part of that conversation, again, with the goal of helping the students achieve their desires and their outcomes. And again, I don't know that those are things that you could expect of your city hall to actually maybe send a council member specifically to come to your church meeting so that they can hear those conversations. But I think it is a fair expectation that any public institution demonstrate that they fully acknowledge that their mission is to serve their constituents and that they need to build and value that relationship. And so those are a lot of things that we have absolutely initiated and are continuing to initiate, and we'll continue to look for all of those opportunities to daily model that we recognize why we exist and what our goal is, and it's to deliver that promise that higher education is in all of the many facets that it comes forward in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denny, for that explanation. The next question is for Chief Miller, and I cannot tell if he is on the...
Chief Miller is on vacation. Lieutenant Pirtle is here in his stead.
Okay, Lieutenant Pirtle, then hopefully you can answer, but it is based on, this is the question, and then you can go from there. In the previous meeting, we discussed working on building a better relationship with the student body. Students want to know, how will the police form a better connection with students? Can the police department work with the Division of Student Affairs to better address student concerns?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on today. Like Mr. Denny said, Chief Miller's out of town. So one of the things that the police department as a whole has been working on is the fact that, Chief Miller works very closely with Student Affairs as is. He's a member of our CARE team, which is our crisis awareness response emergency team that the university has. He's also a member of the sexual assault response team, which has representatives from the Department of Student Affairs. We regularly have conversations with the Dean of Students office. And then one of the things that we are looking into doing as far as becoming more involved with our student concerns is, the one concern that students have really told the police department is that they don't know our officers. And so we have really sat down and done a really good job of trying to create a strategy to help, identify where can we be better about making sure that not just student leaders know who our officers are, but know just our students who are just here to come in class, and maybe the students who aren't the most involved students, how can they get to know more about their police department and the things that we have. So currently we've formed a strategic partnership with SGA, and we have regular meetings with HIBA to kind of discuss these things and things that we can do better. We've solicited out to our officers for ideas on ways to get the community more involved and things that we're interested in. We have, at the police department, we have a lot of officers and employees who are really big into esports and e-gaming. And so we've reached out to the Gamers Guild. We have some officers who really enjoy fishing. And so we're currently exploring with the game warden about having like a day where our students can come, no fishing license is needed, and they can fish here on campus and have a little bit of a competition with that. A couple of the other things that we do a police survey every 4 years. We're actually going to be moving that up to a less time period. And we've been working with SGA and HIBA to establish some questions that SGA would have that they would like to be sending out to students. Chief's currently also working on some forums. One of them they're calling the Contemporary Issues in Community Law Enforcement. He's working with Dr. Powers, Dr. Penn, and Professor Taylor to help develop the forum and bringing together disciplines in criminal justice. We're also really trying to ramp up our community outreach that we have by using visual graphics. And the one thing that Chief actually just finished designing was, the little feather flags that you see in the ground that people have to kind of advertise. We're actually looking at making those with our officer faces on them and some officer information. That way we can really make sure that, I'm not just Lieutenant Pirtle, that I'm Kyle, and that all of our officers are, we're people here at this university too, and we want to be a part of this community as much as we possibly can. Chief also has been attending regional chief of police meetings with, I believe it's 9 other chief of police departments. And one of the things that they talk about there is officer development, officer training, and things like that to make sure that everything that we're doing here is up to industry standards. And one of the big things that we talk about with that is that being an accredited police department, our training, our standards, and holding ourselves to the highest level of accountability is the most important thing to us. One of the other concerns that students have brought forward is that being that the Bayou building is our largest building, it's tough to always have a police presence there often. And so we're looking into turning what was the old police department, Bayou 1636, into kind of like a storefront or an opportunity to where we can have more officer presence in that building. And we're in the early stages of that as far as building that out to accommodate us. One of the other things that Chief just started about a month ago was he wanted to try to get more personal and have more personal connections with our students. And so instead of just having everything done through the police department Twitter and Facebook page, Chief went ahead and created a Twitter page, which is at UHCL Top Cop. And it's not just about policing, it's about, things that Chief does. One of Chief's biggest things is he loves biking. He's really, really big into mountain biking. And I know he's talked a lot with Hiba about kind of biking here on campus and things like that. But, Chief has a lot of passions with that. And, so he's taken that opportunity to really try to reach out to the community. And so that's going to be the big thing. One of the things that he's really excited to start, he had this idea when he first was interviewing for the chief of police, and it was a basic idea called Ask the Chief. And he's going to create a nice sign for it that says Ask the Chief, and he's going to set up a table in different buildings throughout campus. And it's an opportunity for people to come and literally ask the chief anything they want, as far as it doesn't have to all just be policing, but just an opportunity to continue to engage with the community in a different way. We also currently have regular meetings with the Signal on a bi-weekly basis. And, we think it's really, really important that they have a good understanding. They do a great job of getting the message out for anything going on at the university. So we really want to make sure that we continue to have that great relationship.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Pirtle, for stepping in for Chief Miller. We appreciate your response.
Thank you for having me.
There is a follow-up question to what you just said.
Yeah.
Student asked in the chat, what does up to industry standards actually mean when the industry is being greatly criticized on a global level?
So Miss Allison, we're actually accredited through the International Accreditation of Law Enforcement Association, and it's a college law enforcement accreditation standard that instead of we just take our policies and procedures and we just write them as we feel such, our policies are designed based on court cases and open dialogue between multiple agencies and multiple individuals who have a vested interest in law enforcement. And so in my 12 years here, we have been accredited for nearly 9 of those years. And it is one of those things that we take a lot of pride in the fact that only 3% of law enforcement agencies in this country are accredited.
If I could add to that, please. In a layman's terms, it's making sure that we have industry best practice standards. Where the criticism is coming across other police departments is where they fail to have best practice demonstrated through outcomes and results, not just, well, this is most efficient use of our resources, but outcomes and results with their community and best practices. And the accreditation process comes in and absolutely tests, not only do we have those best practice standards, but that we train to them and we practice to them. And so I just want to be a little bit of clarity. It's not just industry standards, it's industry best standards.
Thank you, gentlemen, for those responses. To continue on, this particular question is for administration in general, and Mr. Denny and Lieutenant Purtle did talk about some of these initiatives or initiatives in general and transparency, but here's the question from the student perspective. During this time, it is incredibly important to increase communication with the student body. Students want to know what administration is working on for the students in a timely manner. Is there any way the administration can work with the Signal to let students know what they are planning on to keep things transparent?
I'll jump in real quick. And this is just one of many avenues and opportunities for us to continue to be transparent. In the Division of Student Affairs, we're working directly with Lindsay Humphreys, who is the program manager for the Signal. We meet with Lindsay on a regular basis to have a direct connection with the Signal. Also, several of the Signal reporters know from an administrative standpoint and a standpoint specifically with the Division of Student Affairs that we will always reach out to them immediately. One of the initiatives that we started was when we receive administrative mandates, those will go directly to Lindsay and she will alert the Signal. They will then reach out to me and the other vice presidents directly with any questions related to administrative changes. So basically, we're making sure that that information gets to the Signal immediately through their program manager. And the one thing I will say is that all of the vice presidents make themselves available on a daily basis, including same-day meetings if necessary for urgent items and for any concerns that either students may have or if they want clarification on how we're moving forward as an institution. So that's just one initiative right there, just working directly with the reporters and sharing administrative information with them in real time as it happens on some items.
Dr. Jones, may I add to that? I'd like to add that I know that our Associate VP for Communications, Marketing and Communications, who I believe is on the call, is scheduling regular meetings with the Signal as well. And we want to make sure that all information is bi-directional so that we not only have the opportunity to field the questions the students might have, but also have the opportunity to inform the students regarding what is happening at an administrative level and university-wide in terms of marketing and communication efforts. So we too look forward to a productive and open relationship on that. And similarly as to my colleagues, pledge transparency in that regard.
Are there any other administrators who would like to respond to this particular question?
Go ahead. I just wanted to add to that, which is just to show the intentionality. If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Bunch will be talking with the Signal editor about potentially having an admin corner where that space can be used to keep the students updated on what's going on, as well as those special initiatives or concerns that the students may have when they're talking to the various VPs. But something that is literally marked so that we can do that ongoing communication regularly to keep them up to speed.
Yes, and I'll chime in. This is Dion. Good morning, everyone. I did speak with Ms. Emily Wolf on yesterday, and she did note that the Signal is in a state of transition, but in communicating with Brandon Pena, who was the previous editor-in-chief, we definitely want to remain in close communication with all student communication liaisons. for the respective updates as far as campus operations, we in marketing communications try to ensure that all information that we distribute, whether it be via email, the website, or social media, has been verified and accurate. And I know that information needs to be distributed in a timely manner, but we also want to make sure that it's been verified and vetted to avoid any questions or missteps in the information sharing process. So moving forward, we definitely want to be in alignment with the vice presidents as well as President Blake in decisions that are made regarding the fall, and not only informing students of what we plan to do for the campus, but also to let students know that we are listening to their concerns and want to provide meaningful and impactful tips for how they can not only be successful at the university, but also in life. So I think we have some good headway to make, but overall we want to make sure that information from the university gets out to students very consistently and frequently.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have anyone else who wants to respond to this particular question? If not, then I would move on to question number 5. It is also for it's a general administration question. We understand that UH Clear Lake offers students information to submit formal complaints through Compact with Texans. However, many students want to voice their concerns but do not feel comfortable doing so. Is it possible to create a forum for students to communicate their concerns anonymously to the administration throughout their tenure at U of H Clear Lake? So I think that, well, from a faculty perspective, creating safe spaces for students to voice their concerns.
If I can offer on that, that's something that I think we would definitely could be supportive of, or would be supportive of. We have already created this year an appeals committee. Obviously, those are not anonymous because those are dealing with very specific requests for appeals on tuition and fees and things like that. But absolutely, you know, again, it goes back to the demonstrating on a daily basis and modeling that the university recognizes what our mission is, and that our commitment to our constituents, and any path that facilitates that, I think we can find a path to make that successful. I recognize and understand the reason often why students want to commit or submit an anonymous comment. Those are often more challenging to take specific action on, but that doesn't mean that they don't still help inform and guide us on our actions.
So one of the components of and I've mentioned this, we mentioned this during the last town hall, the Division of Student Affairs will be implementing and actually the name change has already taken place. The Student Assistance Center is no longer, the Student Assistance Center is now the Office of Student Advocacy. And this department was uniquely created to not only advocate for all of our students, but also to address student concerns on behalf of the student, looking at our students as not only the priority, but viewing our students and their individual issues as a sort of student ombudsman when dealing with, administration or concerns. One of the components of the Office of Student Advocacy will be a online form, which will be added to the website once it's developed. And this form will give students an opportunity to interact with a student advocate anonymously. If they want specific action, they can, at the end of the form, include their name and contact information. However, if they so choose not to, they can do so anonymously. So that will be one of the components of the Office of Student Advocacy.
Dr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to provide kind of like an overarching comment with regard to that last question. I think what ends up happening is students ask global questions and we respond with fiefdom kinds of answers. And I think that that is in opposition to inclusion. So what a student or anyone in our community needs to know is that with regard to Title VII, which is discrimination around race or any of those protected categories, a student can confidentially and a student can anonymously make any, or anyone in our community can make any kind of report to my office, which is the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Title IX, and then we will determine how we move forward. If the merits of what's being reported warrant an investigation, then that's what will happen. That's what we are bound by as a state institution, federally funded. And I just want to be clear about that, that this office that reports to the president is free and clear of any kind of what I'm going to call cloud, and I'm going to say that that cloud might represent corruption or inability to be unbiased. That absolutely is what we're here for faculty, staff, students, and visitors, to make sure that we're free of any kind of bias. What I also caution students, because this is a student town hall, is that sometimes things take longer to get to the end result than the actual initial emotion allows. So it could take 6 months or 4 weeks to do an investigation, but that doesn't compromise the integrity of the investigation. Any kind of claim or report can come to the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Title IX, and it will be pursued. It doesn't mean that the outcome doesn't have to look like what your emotion wants it to, but it absolutely will be pursued. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson, and to all the other respondents to the question. Are there any other responses to this particular question before I move on to the last question? Okay, great. So question 6, probably Dr. Blake or Dr. Berberich or anyone in the administration who would like to chime in. And some of this has already been addressed, so it sort of would be a summary, I suppose. In the last town hall, students were promised action by multiple members of the administration. Since the last town hall, what specifically has the UH Clear Lake administration done to address the concerns expressed by the student body? And what steps are being or will be taken to address student concerns?
Let the provost take that, because I think some wonderful things are underway. And also, just so that the students can keep in mind that I think Dr. Richardson's caution was important. They won't happen overnight, but there's some absolutely extraordinary things going on that I believe faculty and staff are doing that'll help to move the institution forward in the areas of equity, equality, and also the concerns around racial disparities and some of the ills that we suffer through in this society. So I'm going to let the provost talk about some of those that I've read about, which I'm very excited about.
Thank you, President Blake. And when I'm speaking now, I want to recognize that I'm speaking not just on behalf of, well, really that academic affairs represents the faculty also. And so as I'm speaking here and telling you, I think the last time we met, and in the letter that the president, my initiative was around establishing the Center for Engagement, Teaching and Learning. I want to start there and just say, you know, the physical space is going to be in existence here in early September. And when we last talked about that, we discussed a proposal that had come out of faculty to establish what are called faculty fellowships on race and diversity. And those faculty fellows would be connected with that center as it's established. So I'm pleased to report we're going to be launching that process so that those fellows can be identified this fall and begin to do their work in really advancing equity in curriculum. So the theme here, the actionable item, is that these fellows are going to agree to come forward and spend some of their time to focus on improving their curriculum. And I'm very excited to report that coming from faculty, Faculty Senate Executive Committee, and a group of faculty called UHCL Anti-Racism Faculty Work Group have proposed to my office as well as the president to really kind of build upon that first initiative I just described, but in two other additional ways. They're suggesting, and we're going to be working with them this fall on creating an interdisciplinary degree granting program in equity and ethnic studies. And that will be housed within the College of Human Sciences and Humanities. And importantly, while we're building that, we would be starting immediately with launching a colloquium on innovative pedagogy. And so these activities dovetail quite nicely with that faculty fellow proposal. And the second proposal they brought forward is the implement a diversity, equity, and inclusion training for faculty and staff. And so actionable items where we can begin to help us all have the important discussions and training around these issues. And so I want to recognize Dr. Heather Kannenberg, who is now a past president of Faculty Senate, who drafted the work on behalf of these faculty. It's been received by the president and I, and we are extremely excited about the opportunity to have these discussions and to put these proposals into action. If it's okay, at this point, I'd like to defer to Dr. Aaron Hart to talk about the updates with the work group that we discussed last. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to announce that the University of Houston Clear Lake campus-wide work group on race, equity, and inclusion has already met twice. The initial meeting took place last week, and the group is moving full steam ahead, having their second meeting Tuesday. The group, and what I'm most proud of, is that the group consists of 3 students, and I'm making the assumption, I can't see on a participant list, but I know one of our students is currently on this call, and I think the other 2 may be as well. But the group has full student participation. And they also have the support of the entire administration as they come up with initiatives moving forward. So I think that's a very strong, actionable item. And as the administration met with that group, there are no limitations. We're going to consider everything. And if proposals come from the group that may be timely, to Dr. Richardson's point, or may take a while to put in place, we will still work no matter how long it takes to realize the initiatives that come out of that group. So they've had their second meeting, and we hope to get updates from the work group very soon.
Are there any other responders to this last question?
Dr. Jones, if I might close the loop on this, as Mr.
Yes, sir.
Denning spoke earlier, from a university advancement standpoint, as suggested and as discussed at the last meeting, we have activated the alumni partnership to engage our largest single stakeholder group at the university, our alumni, in this discussion as well. And so we're working with the Office of Alumni Engagement to establish an affinity group of alumni who will participate in this process with all others at the university, so that their voices and experience and ideas can be shared as well. So we look forward to making sure that from a university standpoint, we're comprehensive and include those who came before us as well as those who are here now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Thank you. This has been wonderful, and it sounds like all the initiatives that are coming out really speak to our strategic plan and that pillar of diversity and inclusivity, which is very important for us right now. So that's all I got. I had one job to do, so I hope I did it well. And it was an honor to facilitate this part of the town hall. I really do appreciate being asked to do so. So I will turn it over to Heather.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for facilitating this meeting. But I want to say thank you to our amazing administrators as well for answering our questions. We're very close to the 1 hour mark on our discussion, so we'll be taking a short 2 to 5 minute break to give our attendees an opportunity to collect their thoughts and prepare for the Q&A session. Feel free to use this time to type your questions in the chat box and we will address them shortly. For those joining us on Instagram Live, you will be disconnected, but don't forget to rejoin us for the second half. The first question we have here is, what can students do on campus this fall or from home to process and move forward with dealing with how they feel about the threats of public safety? More specifically, the loss of public order across the nation that has sparked fires, heated public protests, and breaches of peace in some areas. Rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. I ask because Dr. Richardson said sometimes things take 4 to 6 months.
I think if I can provide that, just a response to that, what I wanted folks to understand is a couple of things. So there's a couple of constructs here. When I was talking about a timeline, what I was talking about the investigation, right? So if someone brings something to my office, it could take 4 to 6 months in quotations to investigate it, right? In terms of getting witnesses and facts and things like that together. I don't necessarily agree or want this to be the interpretation that I have a 4 to 6 month expectation around the conditions that affect my community. But what I will say is if it took 400 years of deposits, I think that as we work collectively in a team orientation, we have to give time for it to come to some kind of resolution. But I don't want to put 4 to 6 months on emotions. I just wanted to make that distinction that 4 to 6 months is around what it takes to do an effective investigation that gets brought to my office.
Let me add to that, okay? And I've experienced this myself, is that if a student expresses concern about safety to Dr. Richardson's office, to my office, to the provost office, whomever, we're going to take care of safety first. We're going to make sure that the student is protected, whatever the issue is, okay? And I'm just thinking back over my past 3 years. I know that we've been in some of those circumstances. That is different from fully investigating what has happened and taking some broader action as a result. So when students bring their issues forward, they must be very clear about what their feelings of safety or lack thereof or insecurity are, so that we know, as opposed to just mentioning it objectively and one of us needing to interpret it. Make the statement. I think that's important to note. Dr. Richardson, what would you say?
No, I agree with that. Again, it's just I want folks to be able to understand, and maybe I think I can make it even clearer, because I do agree, and it's not because we're aligned. I really agree. But we're talking about conditions and matters of the heart. We're not talking about conditions and matters of intellect. So we can have conversation, we can broaden them out, but we're going to respond with swiftness and with intentionality that is going to show that we are aligned to eradicate whatever it is to keep our community safe, right? So no emotion or feeling is going to be unfounded, right? Because typically what happens where we are now was because of the history of when something was brought to the table, it was dismissed. There's no more dismissing. Everyone, which is Project Hope, honoring other people's experiences, right? Everyone's experience is going to be recognized. And again, I don't want to make this philosophical. I just want to say, don't think that this is not falling on deaf ears. Is that?
Can I just say something again? I want Dr. Hart to chime in, because I remember from our last town hall that the students were concerned not only on the campus, but also as they move into the downtown area or whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Hart, you had some ideas about, supporting students in that way so that they felt safer and more welcome, some initiatives, service learning outcomes, whatever. If you want to describe those a little bit to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before I even get into that, let me just say that we have students who work in the two major departments in the Division of Student Affairs who are helping us formulate these programs, but through the Office of Student Involvement and Leadership, and also through Student Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the two offices within the Division of Student Affairs, we are looking at several programs, activities, and initiatives, whether, like you say, whether virtually or in person, to address issues around civic engagement. And these will be initiatives, as much as we can do this safely, obviously within CDC guidelines, led by administrators to how we can advocate not only in the Clear Lake community, but also the Houston community as well. And these will include initiatives around voter registration and voting and civic engagement, walk the vote. We will have civic engagement programs and activities where if we can do so safely, we will look to charter a bus or a van or some type of transportation and actually take students to various locations throughout the city to actively engage with these efforts around equity and inclusion in a safe manner. In addition to that, the other thing I'd like to add is that as we come up with these programs and initiatives, we utilize our students who are in these departments to help and assist us with these ideas for planning these events. I would also add, and I look specifically at the question someone stated, how do we address some of these things with how we when we internalize these? I would also look to our counseling and psychological services on campus. They have several programs through the counseling center to deal with some of the personal issues that students are dealing with as well. And so I would always encourage our students to look at counseling services as a resource.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. I'm going to go ahead and go towards the next question we have here. In reference to the diversity work group, why are there only 3 students on the committee? Why couldn't there be an equal ratio?
I'll go ahead and take this one. The idea around the work group was there are 3 members from each of the divisions throughout the university for equal representation. So there are 3 members from advancement, finance and administration, student affairs, and academic affairs, and 3 students. This is just the initial work group. And so I don't want anyone to think that all students, all faculty and staff will not have an opportunity to be involved. This was just the initial work group to get these initiatives started, and the group can choose to bring in more students, more faculty and staff as the programs are developed. But the idea specifically was to have 3 students and 3 members from each of the administrative divisions.
Okay, thank you so much. So here we have another question. It's kind of a clarification question. Since the financial literacy course was not meant to protect Black lives, what part of the university's response was?
I said, when I talked about that, I said it wasn't directly related, but if you look at the overall context, what are we trying to do here as an institution of higher learning? And that is to prepare students so that they have well-being, health, and also prosperity in their lives. So when you look at what our overall purpose is, it ultimately is about elevating everyone's life, okay? And we know that when you're able to make your own choices and you have the resources to support that, then you have the ability to be safer, okay? To feel that you have more of the ability to make a contribution, not only to yourself, but to the communities in which you live through the leadership that you're willing to take on. Keep in mind that everything isn't one for one. Sometimes they're triangulated, which create better outcomes in the future, meaning they're less direct. But I'll let someone else also respond to that and hopefully help students understand it a bit more clearly.
Again,
It seems like we'll have to work on that one, Ms. Moya, okay?
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. So I guess I will move on to the next question, but I just want to let y'all know that this was also a topic that constantly came up in our first town hall. So this is clearly very important to students. Now, our next question we have is, the diversity work group should not be the sole catalyst for change. UHCL's equity issues do not stop at race. When do we become preventative?
I'll jump in and not that I have anything specific that hasn't been said before, but I think as we move forward with our strategic plan, I think as we move forward with the various initiatives on campus, we are striving to be more preventative. We're striving to be intentional. In our discussions as administrators, several conversations we're thinking about, how will this lend to preventing issues around bias, discrimination? As we move forward with initiatives, and I know this is very vague, we're constantly not looking at being responsive, we're looking at being preventative in many of our various meetings and many of the initiatives that we're putting forward, things of that nature. So I will definitely speak to some more specific, initiatives and things that we're doing down the line to respond directly to the students on this one.
If I can just add then,
Add,
I'm sorry, Scott, I'll let you go first.
no, you can go.
I was just going to point out, and I know when I made my remarks in the first hour about the proposal that came from the anti-racism faculty work group, I mentioned one of their proposals was to engage in training. And I know I didn't give any details, but in response to this question, what I see training for faculty and staff in areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion providing is not just, I think it is preventive. It's helping educate us all. It will allow us to, redefine some of our campus diversity practices and hopefully create a better experience. And so, granted, it's a proposal. We're going to be talking with those faculty and working with key leadership to implement. I think it's a very strong proposal to engage in the training process from an education standpoint. But I do see that as an example of something that's helping us try to be preventive, to try to move beyond the past and to really create practices and actions here at this campus that would come from such training to improve the lives of all of us here. Thank you.
So I want to just briefly add to what's being said, and so I want students to understand that regardless of titles around UHCL leadership, that what you're saying is landing and it's being deposited. And so when we talk about the kinds of things that are being done around equity, diversity, and inclusion, I really want to give just kind of an executive summary of a position like mine that did not exist at UHCL prior to President Blake. And so one of the things that we're doing, that I'm doing specifically with regard to that question, positions that are all faculty positions and all director positions and above right? So they go through my office and we provide the level of scrutiny around what affirmative action and equity is around having diverse searches, diverse applicant pools, gender in our applicant pools, how we go out to recruit to bring folks to our mission around our distinction of being an HSI. And, quite specifically, a Brown serving institution.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I think Mr. Sally had his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to add a different element to this discussion because we've had an awful lot of talk about positions, divisions, titles, areas, and things like this. But I think most importantly, there's a spirit of what we all want to do. And we've also had a lot of discussion around relationship building, whether that's from Lieutenant Pirtle or from our area and all the others. I think we have to recognize this an individual and collective will to better understand one another. And I think that to Dr. Richardson's prior point, it goes beyond whatever title we have or whatever role we play. And, training, instruction, all of these things are part of it and helpful. But there has to be a recognition of the individual and collective will to do this work and to do it for reasons that are understandable. And what I'm hearing is that that's coming from both directions, from all directions, from the students and faculty and staff who are here and the administrators as well. And so there has to be an embrace of our personal responsibility to do this work beyond whatever formal trainings or anything else are available to us. And I felt like that type of personal approach to this discussion has not been adequately conveyed yet. And so I just wanted to add that to see if there was any further discussion that could be had about that, because it really gets to more to what we believe and what we will do than our responsibilities as professionals or as students.
I think that Mr. Staley's point is to be well taken. It's the responsibility of all of us to improve our community. That's narrowly in terms of the campus as well as more broadly. So no bystanders. We're all supposed to be intentional and active and caring. What is so important to me, and I will just state it, is that everyone here, okay, I see the statement about race. This is not limited to race. The impetus or the catalyst was what was happening in our country and around the world. But it really is about our common humanity. We are all people who should be caring about each other, including each other, listening to each other more intentionally and without the biases that I believe history is actually socialized us all to value misappropriately in that regard. But we have to be conscientious, and that is about age, and that's about sexual orientation, and about gender, and about geography, and about religion. It's all of that, all of those incredibly wonderful variables on which human beings become groups and become members. Okay, but the biggest group we have is our common humanity, that we all part of the same larger group. So we have to all be intentional about that. And I will ensure that my team, which is incredibly complex and diverse and large, as I've been told, that they will be working intentionally and sensitively on helping us to become a more genuinely inclusive, caring, and supportive to productivity. That's all of the students and also our staff and faculty and administrators, that we will become this collective community that is really caring and supportive of each other in terms of the goals that we set for ourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Blake. We have another question here. We have a few questions, actually. This one is from Randall. In 1972, students from Kentucky were arrested for disorderly conduct arising from a confrontation between police and student protesters. Is the anti-racism faculty work group prepared to discuss appropriate interactions with police? I ask because 9% of UHCL students are Black, although Black communities are hit hard by police.
Hi, I'm Heather Cannonberg, and I am faculty who assisted with helping put the proposal forward to our administration. And so while I don't want to speak on behalf of all of the faculty who did it, I do have some information I can share. And so yes, I can say the faculty are prepared to work on the issues that Mr. Randall identified of dealing with appropriate interactions with police. I can say that generally speaking, the Equity and Ethnic Studies program that was developed by the anti-racist faculty emphasized the idea of dealing with white supremacy and structural racism and systemic oppression through the coursework. So while it's in proposal form, and we're so pleased to hear support from the administration and eager to continue meeting and working with them, that is exactly the kind of thing, along with many others, that will be that are thought to be a part of that process. So thank you so much for the question.
But I would like Heather to give you a little bit more information, which we were created in 1974. And Heather, I want you to tell everyone the commitment of the faculty to transforming the larger society as well as our regional community in terms of one of the programs that you've been involved in since 1974, when we were created at the request of NASA to deliver advanced studies and career-related opportunities to those who are part of the civilian community. Please explain to them. This is a very special place. We can do this. We can become the model for equity and equality.
Yes, we do have a history of doing really fascinating and important work in the community. As a public comprehensive institution, one of the essential programs to our identity has been our program partnering with the Texas Department of Corrections. And so Dr. Bill Powers and Dr. Rekha Subramanian chair and help run that program, where we work with individuals who are in the different detention centers and detained in prisons that are, we know the justice system is rife with problems, but we work to provide degrees, master's degrees, undergraduate degrees to students and to help them access education in a state that historically that's been a real challenge in Texas. And so it's a proud partnership, and a lot of effort goes into it, and making sure that UH Clear Lake can be accessible and provide rigorous academic opportunities for all of our students, including the students in the TDC program, and that we work with them after graduation and make sure that, however, as alumni of our institution, we can continue to partner and support them. So President Blake, I hope that that was what you were referencing, but that's a key element of our identity.
I want to thank you, Dr. Cannonberg, and I see his hand is up, and I just want to summarize by just saying that example all the way back to 74. What excites me as coming here as provost, and what I continue to see, is a commitment of the faculty to support students and to engage in them. This is a very student-centered place. And I think when you see proposals like we've described come forward on these topics, it's just another demonstration of that. Thank you, Hibba. I know you want to move on.
Well, actually, I would like to hear from the UHCL Police Department. So, Lieutenant Colonel, if you're here, do you have a response to this about how the question was, is the anti-racism faculty work group prepared to discuss appropriate interactions with the police? So is there a way that the police department is working on, addressing the way that they interact with students?
I would say yes. I think the biggest thing that we have preached for the 12 years that I've been here is we want to treat people the way that we expect them to treat us. Mm-hmm. As far as the anti-racism work group, I know that we have 2 supervisors who are currently on that board. And one of the things that we want to do is, and Dr. Hart kind of mentioned, like, this is just the preliminary group. We want to cycle all of our employees and all of our police sworn personnel through this work group to make sure that we're all on the same page as a department. And, we really try to make sure that we do our best to show that we're here to support students, faculty, and staff. And we want to facilitate anything that we can do to help bring change and start change. And that's why we're participating in this. We've been meeting with you on a regular basis. And, I know that we're working really hard to make sure that the community, we've always felt we were a transparent PD. But one thing that we've seen is that we can be better with that as a whole. And so that's the one thing that we're really, really trying to get out of this and show and demonstrate.
Okay, thank you so much. So our next question we have here is, for the anti-racist work group, will the courses developed be offered to incoming students and also students who wish to learn more about critical race theory?
Yes, so the current proposal, and again, it's being developed and there's a whole group of faculty working on it. The current proposal would be that that would be open to incoming students, to current students, that there would be an opportunity to major, possibly minor, and then also just to take courses that were interesting and fit in the students' interest and passion, in addition to learning more. And so intersectionality, critical race theories, decolonialization, all kinds of efforts. Right now, those concepts and structures are conceptualized by the faculty who worked on developing it and still coming together and being formed. So, but yes, that would be a piece of it.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Cannonberg. The next question we have is, what specific plans are in place to directly protect the Black community? I'm requesting timelines and participants, and I think that this question, we're looking for an answer that's not the diversity work group. What else is the university doing to directly protect the Black community?
I think obviously due to, the silence, that lets you know that we need to do a better job of getting our initiatives out specifically specifically related to the Black community. I know that we have some passive and active programming through the Office of Student Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. However, having said that, it's not enough specifically to say this is geared towards the Black community. So this is, and as I look in the chat box right here, I see that Miss Allison put that out there. So Miss Allison, I know that you and I have had several meetings. Let's get together and talk about some ideas. So the next time this question comes up, we can have an actual tentative plan in place to be able to answer that question. So obviously we're not doing everything we should or could be doing.
I'd like to offer just a bit different perspective on that. My silence was because I didn't want to provide a domination around responses that speak critically to what the focus is. But now that being said, what I'm going to say in my role is I'll welcome any kind of engagement with students around having the discussion, the Black or brown discussion, right? So that whole Black or brown diaspora, we can have that discussion, and then we can identify and align specific tactics and programming for transformative impact. Right? Not to just keep a conversation going, but literally to do those things that we can see transformative impacts. And so I just want to say that's where my silence was, because I can dominate things when it comes to an area that I'm very passionate about outside of scholarship. I welcome the opportunity to work you know, with each and every one of you. And guess what? The work doesn't have to be done by people that look like me,
Yeah.
right? And we need to
So,
be very critical about that.
okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. Richardson. Before I continue, I do want to clarify that again, something that was discussed in the previous town hall that seems to kind of be coming back is that asking students to help form a response as to what the university should be doing is kind of uncomfortable because students are putting their faith in administration, especially our Black students. They're putting their faith in our administration to help protect their lives. That's one of the reasons why they're dedicated and committed to this institution. So going back and turning around and asking them for solutions is slightly alarming, actually very alarming. And the silence was also alarming. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. The Black Student Association has reached out to the Faculty Senate several times with no response in months. When are Black students included in the conversation?
So I need to lead with an apology because I'm actually sitting here going through my email inbox. I don't see any emails, not that they didn't happen. So I am going to follow up with Miss Allison and the leaders of the BSA because I didn't receive any notes, but again, that doesn't mean they didn't happen. And so I think that Black students and Black student voices should be a part of every conversation, not just Faculty Senate. They should be able to contribute, and it shouldn't, it should just happen organically and naturally and be an automatic piece of what we do. And so I will reach out directly, and Dr. Elizabeth Beavers, who's our new Faculty Senate president as well. So watch for notes from us, and we'll figure out A, what happened, and B, how to move forward and include the BSA and anyone who's interested in being a part of the Faculty Senate conversations or contributions.
Well, feel free to continue asking questions for our students in the chat box. Oh, look, just like that, we got another one. Is college the only place Black people get equal protection? I welcome UHCL to recruit more open experience administration to respond to this question about what else it can do. Is there an undergraduate program that creates a safe learning environment for Black or biracial students?
This is Professor Taylor. As a professor, we try to, for all of our classes, to be responsive to not only the Black students, but to all of the students in our class. For myself, having taught 46 students over this summer semester, and of course, I teach in criminology, so race and justice and contemporary issues in criminology, I was able to focus on those issues that concern the students and the community. We don't want to just limit one group or the other. I try to cover in my class overall information that students can learn from, and very successfully, based on the comments from the students from this past summer, a lot of them were not aware of the different injustices, those of different racial ethnicities and things like that. But as a professor, we want to make sure all of our students are included in the learning. And that's what academia is supposedly to be for. We're all based on student success and focusing on students doing well in our classes and making sure that they're getting the proper education. I know that the criminology department is setting up a monthly focus speaker series that they're going to start to cover some of the issues that have been raised regarding discrimination and racial issues. So that is something that Dean Short has really worked with us for to go ahead and do. So we are looking at issues, and we are trying to address issues that concern all of our students, because if we can get that knowledge across all areas, I think it'll make it that much difference without having to single out a group and leave out a group. We don't want to do that. We want to make education all inclusive for our students. We want all of our students to be successful. That's part of our mission statement, our vision statement, and we're all focused on student success. So however we can help students in any area, all of the faculty are open. Doors are open. You could come in, you can email. We will respond and we will support you however we can.
Thank you, Joyce. If I can just add to that really quickly, I think, Joyce is describing a program where she does feel, they're thinking proactively to create that safe environment. I think we've already discussed other actions we're taking to give faculty the ability to review their courses and programs to do exactly that and develop new programs. I guess the third piece, and it sort of connects with the question that had been asked in the first hour about ways for students to share information. I think we're always open to hear confidentially if there are concerns about creating that safe environment. And I want to just reiterate, I know Dr. Richardson talked about his role in the confidentiality. From the academic affairs side, we too strive hard to, even outside the system of student evaluation of courses, which is a very confidential system in terms of anonymity, I guess, in terms of the student information then is collected as a group from those courses and then utilized within. There's another system. And finally, I would want to make sure everyone knows the provost office is also a place where students can come forward, share concerns, because we want to be proactive in those places where we want to improve. We want to recognize those places where we are doing what we need to do, but we also need to hear from students if there are areas in programs where they don't feel safe, and so that we can work confidentially to improve in those areas. Thank you.
So
if I
one more
could,
thing.
Dr. Richardson, please.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll wait.
All right, I was just going to make a comment on a comment in the chat box that you didn't call out, but it was the comment on the response to the police department's engagement in conversations with the police department. And I wanted to bring out that in Lieutenant Pirtle's earlier comments, he did talk about the work that they're doing to develop open forums that will be on criminology and engagement with the police, and that they're working heavily with our faculty and our academic programs to merge those together, to have those open forums. And their intent is to also work with other initiatives across the campus to engage our students and to be responsive to how to have those conversations with the police. And it is not going to be focused on how our community have to change to have those conversations with the police, but how our police have to present themselves to be receptive to have those conversations. And they absolutely are working on those initiatives and already have some initial, like I said, those campus forums that they're working on and so forth, and will continue to develop those opportunities. Thank you.
So I just wanted to add something. Again, right, it's this whole pause, that silence, and I want to add something to that silence, as I think it speaks volumes. But I think, and I don't want to speak for the students here, but what I do want to say is what I think I hear coming through, right, most critically is, it is the Joyce Taylors that will consistently come up with how do we find remedy as a Black faculty member for the Black and brown condition. And I think what I'm hearing students saying, without articulating it this way, is that we need to get to these next practice spaces where we're having white faculty and staff champion what that next practice is for racial equality, for safety, right? For leading the conversation, for engaging the students, for being co-chairs to the Black Student Association. That's what we want to see, right? And so I'm just hoping that that is something that we can grasp onto, because at the end of the day, I think it's critically important for us to recognize what may have happened, right? And not be dismissive of any kind of emotion or feeling, but also know that we have to be in a eyes forward orientation, right? Rear view mirror versus the windshield, because we have the opportunity to make the impact, but it needs to be uncomfortable in order for us to be comfortable in a next practice orientation.
And if I can add, I'm sorry, Dr. Richardson, to what you're speaking of, is we need to create a culture of allyship.
Exactly right.
Among faculty, staff, and students, where everyone feels comfortable in a safe space to have these dialogues and to come up with best practices and strategies to address whatever is at hand. And it needs to be from different dynamics, so that along with everything else that we need to be doing, it is creating that culture of being allies from different dynamics.
If I can just add, I think I see that in both work groups. I see that in the work group that Dr. Hart has talked about in terms of the representation and the commitment, and I see it in the commitment of our faculty. I appreciate Joyce coming forward and speaking, but I just want to recognize again that proposal came from a large group of faculty in terms of initiatives that they wanted to move forward, to be proactive, to really have a different kind of conversation about how we can do things to improve. And so I just want to recognize all of the faculty. I think Scott's point is well taken, but I think what we are doing at UHCL is beginning to we are demonstrating that we are making that engagement across various races. Thank you.
Hiba, this is David Rakita. I don't know how to raise my hand via Zoom, so I apologize for that. Hi, Dr. Blake. Just very quickly, want to say from the Dean of Students perspective, I'm hearing several themes. One, it's a scary thing to find people to make a complaint or to issue a concern. A lot of people don't know where or how to make a complaint or a concern. We talk about self-advocacy. That's a scary concept. Hiba talked about that we're asking students to be involved, but students might fear that involvement. I just simply wanted to say that the Dean of Students office, at least I believe so, should be, can be a safe place for students to come to us, sit down at our table, and express concerns confidentially, issue complaints, and we can talk as a group, as a team, what would be one of the best ways, what would be several best ways to approach this? Would it be, hey, let Ileana and me take this to the next level and let us express this as your advocates? We can do that. Or would it be best, and would you get more mileage out of you self-advocating for yourself? And let's now have discussions about, what does that look like to be a self-advocate? How can we support you in being a self-advocate? So as Hiba said, it's not as scary. We do this all the time in the Dean of Students office. People don't see it happening because this is all behind the scenes. You know, if you've heard me speak at New Student Orientation, that I tell students all the time, before you have what I call road rage, and you get very angry or frustrated with a faculty member and there's no way to pull back words, come to my office. Come yell at us, and we're gonna help you vent and think through it, and then decide what is the next best course to move this along. It may be a longer process, as Dr. Richardson said, but I just want to make the commitment to you that you can come to our office and tell us what you need to tell us, and let's think it through and talk it through and figure out what the next best steps are.
Thank you, Dean Rakita.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, Dr. Blake.
Thank you. I've been raising my hand, not the appropriate way.
I thought you were waving. I'm sorry.
I thought you were waving
I
me,
thought I
Dr.
was
Blake.
waving. I was raising my hand.
Oh, okay.
I've been watching the last, it has to have been a half dozen, possibly 8 chats. I think we're on the wrong side of this. And I need the students who've written these comments to help me understand if this is what they're talking about. I get the sense that the Black students don't feel that their voice is being heard at the top. I see that in the last statement, but that their voice isn't being heard, that the explicit concerns that they have aren't being addressed. Explicit, I'm not talking about the ones that we're all aware of, okay? And then also wanting some feedback about what's going to be done to address those, okay? Address those. I've seen implicit bias. I saw some concern about the police response, another about being excluded from the conversation. Seems to me, and this is what I'm going to have Ms. Webster work on, is that I want to hear with no holds barred what the Black students are concerned about, what is really troubling them, rather than just the global terms about safety. We know that. Safety,
Yeah.
we know, is an issue. Protection is, we know, an issue. We know that there are concerns around the courses, implicit bias. I think, help me, am I missing something? Because it seems as though I think we are all, I feel like we're talking globally when the students seem to be trying to get us to focus on what their explicit concerns are that I think we need to hear.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, I want to hear Black students' voices at with core leadership, those who are in charge of the divisions and the major units, so that we can get a clear understanding of what is provoking the anxiety and the stress that they're clearly feeling through what I'm seeing. Am I off the mark, please?
I think that, I mean, a lot of these concerns are being brought up, but when the question is being asked, what is being done to protect Black lives, there's no response. So whether it's the general concern or an explicit concern, they're still not receiving a proper response.
There are two kinds of protection that I've seen coming out. One is protection on the campus. Okay, so that's going to require a more in-depth conversation. I mean, I can add to that, but I would rather have Chief Miller here so that he can actually give them the difference between, there are two kinds of accrediting bodies, and I can't remember what they are, but there are two kinds. There's one that is specifically for college campuses. And so they have their standards, which are different from the general one that apparently any police safety organization can get. That's important to know, because if it's about the campus, it's going to be about the kind of work that is done and who lives on that campus, which is principally students. So we need to understand that, okay? The other issue about the courses, implicit bias, and then some of the work that the faculty are doing. Getting inside, implicit bias is definitely a one, but there are also potentially some other issues that are going on that Black students want to see addressed.
So, Dr. Blake, to respond to what you said, we have students saying a great resource for insight into what Black students are worried about would be the notes from the first public discussion hosted by the Office of Student Involvement and the Office of Student Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which is what led to the first town hall. Further, she said that we're also not monolithic, so our views vary. It's important to know who you're serving regardless of how small our portion is, or population is.
There is more variation within any group than there is between groups. So that statement is statistically true. The issue is I'm a little bit confused, and I'm just gonna hold on, okay? Because what I'm trying to do is to figure out where the intersection is that we can move forward. There was a comment about getting people who have answers to come in. The answers have to be tailored to the concerns on the campus, okay? We don't have generic answers. We are supposed to be dealing with specifically what the challenges are. And I'm going to go back, and I've been working on some other things, and I will tackle it that way. Okay, thank you, Ms. Lawyer. What I want to do is I want my papers.
Thank you, Dr. Blake. So I'm gonna continue with our questions, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and I'm gonna continue with question number 11 that we had here. When do we begin to hire those who have already done the work and therefore have the answers? This question is referring to hiring administration.
So I can add perspective to that. And that perspective is that we're working on that. And so one of the things that folks at UHCL have to consider is a culture that existed prior to current leadership. The longest tenure in our current leadership. Now, this may come across as an excuse, but it isn't. I need it to land as a reason. The longest tenure in our current leadership is President Blake at 3 years as of August 1st. And so we have done an extraordinary job in our leadership team in terms of identifying the particulars around hiring practices. Again, and I just want to reiterate, prior to Dr. Blake's leadership, there was no accountability for hiring practices. Now there is, right? And so now that should yield, right, the kind of metrics that you can be able to see optically and intrinsically, and then that difference is going to come. And so those are the kinds of things that we have in place that students might not ever get to see technically, but, you know, me serving in my role, that's one of my most critical responsibilities, to the degree that I even have, there is even HR making sure that we have student representation on our search committees when we're hiring for those positions. So that's just one thing that is in place. It's measurable. It's part of the pillars of our strategic plan. And it's what is going to allow us to see optically and intrinsically the kind of difference that that question spoke to.
So to respond to that, we have a question saying, what is the current accountability for hiring practices?
So the accountability for hiring practices are this. An individual, all hiring must go through search and screen. And so what that means is I'm responsible, as I said before, for all faculty positions and all director positions and above. So that means they must go through the laws around affirmative action, discrimination, equity, diversity, and inclusion. They must have a diversity recruitment plan, right? So no longer can we hire folks that makes it comfortable for us because they already live in Houston, or because they have a friend that works in the College of Business, right? And so the expectation is we are looking at, are we recruiting at the Native American Graduate School Association? Are we recruiting at the National Black Graduate School Conferences? Like, those are things that we have in place that they must do in the hiring process, to the degree that, and I'm probably not sure that I should say this, but I've actually shut searches down in my tenure here that did not meet what the president and the leadership team has set out for a strategic initiative.
Now, another follow-up to that is, what kind of progress can we expect to make when so many of our staff are UHCL alumni or have personal relationships prior to employment?
Right.
Let me answer that, Dr. Richardson, please, sir. A great question. One of the things I will say, and it's a testament to this institution, is the quality of the graduates. Well, I have 2 in human resources here, 3 actually, who are diverse ethnicities, who are world-class employees, and so we're very proud and honored to have our graduates on our team. So that's a very much positive. Going back to what Dr. Richardson saying, it said in terms of the actual search process, I'll give you a good example. Today, I denied 2 search committee recommendations because it didn't have enough diverse ethnicity. And these are searchers in 2 disciplines that don't have a lot of diversity, but in this instance, the search committee was not acceptable, and it wasn't because we didn't want, we're lazy or not trying to have diverse representation on the committee. It's just that field in particular did not provide diverse faculty to put on the committee. So I asked my team members to reach outside of the department to expand in the diversity opportunities.
Okay. So I want to bring up this next point that someone mentioned earlier. Since we are constantly asking for input from our Black students, what outreach efforts are being made to include Black students in the conversation? Because right now, the way it seems, the way administrators are wording things is you are asking these students to come forward and themselves and then come up with solutions. Like, what is the administration doing to reach out to these students and get their input?
Maybe I misunderstood some of the conversation, but when we're asking for student input, it's not that they bring the solution, but they bring their perspective. I think that was the intent of the work group, where we were asking student representation, as Dr. Hart had talked about. So I just want to make sure, I think we need to hear from students, and certainly it's important that they don't think that we're asking them to give us the solutions. But what we're hearing from today, and I'll reiterate the president's earlier point, is that we're seeing concerns that are coming through. And this is very important that we do this town hall, but this should not be the only opportunity for us to have this important dialogue. So it's not help us find the solutions together, maybe, but not come with the solutions. Really make sure that we're hearing the concerns, and we are. And I want to thank Student Government Association for putting this together. But I hope coming out of this that what you've heard today from all the various administrators is our desire to continue to stay connected with our students through a variety of channels. I think what we're learning is we need more than just student government and just working with the signal to communicate. And I support that. And I think when I heard the president say, bringing those groups together and forming meetings to have discussion, I think we need to continue to do this as we're looking for solutions. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have limited time. We have like 7 minutes on the clock. So I'm going to try and move a little quicker. But Dr. Hart, you have a comment?
Yeah, and I'll try and be brief. And it touches on a few points that were made. One of the questions was, how do we bring in administrators who have experience addressing with these issues, so the knowledge base is there? Let me share with you, I have 24 years experience addressing these issues, but it's not that easy. Every campus is unique and different. And so when we say we want to work with students, to the provost's point, it's not that we want this to have the students come up with the solutions, but since every campus is unique, since each student, even within various groups, have different wants and requests and issues that they're passionate about, we need to work directly with the students to hear the concerns on a more one-on-one basis. This forum is great. It's a great opportunity, but you really get into the weeds when you can have those one-on-one conversations. So I want to make sure that I'm clear that we want to partner with our students so we as administrators can come up with specific solutions for the students on this campus, because just having that work experience is not enough. You need to actually have that outreach. And just real quick, and I know it sounds like we're saying the same thing over and over again, but the question was asked, how do we reach out to Black students? Well, once again, with the 3 students on the campus work group, we specifically reached out to the Black Student Association, specifically to make sure that group was represented on that campus-wide committee. And the last thing I will say is and we can discuss this at a later point. The Office of Student Advocacy is new. We keep hearing, well, what are the solutions? What are we doing differently? Dr. Blake approved and authorized our campus to have its first ever Office of Student Advocacy and our first student advocate. This is a tangible new initiative that will address all students, but specific concerns for our Black students, for our Latino students, all student groups. When those students have issues and concerns, they want to have those addressed anonymously and see outcomes and see tangible actions. That is what the brand new Office of Student Advocacy will provide for all of our students and our various specific groups on campus.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. So we have this other question. Chief Miller described systematic racism as a bad onion. As we know, onions are being recalled. It's important to avoid unnecessary conversations, but unnecessary and awkward are not the same. Does faculty have enough support from students to address the bad onions, as in the quantity of access to education that 35% of white and 35% of Hispanic students have?
So I just want to add perspective to that question. I thought that was a very interesting question. And this is the perspective that I want to add. I want to reiterate that we now have the mechanisms that are measurable, that you'll be able to see the kinds of results that I think we're getting to. But secondly, one of the things that students can do, and when we're talking about the questions as they're coming in, specifically Black students, your seat at the table is different today. Because of current landscape, you don't come in as the person at the feet of the professor. You come in with a level of subject matter expertise that will have the traditionalism kind of acquiesce to what you need to say. So in other words, we're now having folks at the table that have to listen with their mouths closed. And that is a different approach, right? And so when we talk about the distinction between best practices, and I always say next practices, and we still go back to best practice, but this is a next practice, is that now that you have a seat at the table and folks are listening with their mouths closed, you now don't get to be looked at as, I'm the subject matter expert with the PhD. I need you to tell us how we can partner together in order for us to be in a next practice, future state orientation. And I need to be real about that, right? So take the opportunity, right? So it's not the same opportunity as it was before. We just have students here as placeholders. You now serve as subject matter experts to a degree, and faculty and staff that ask you to the table will have to listen with their mouths closed in order for us to move the needle.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. So we do have to call this meeting to an end shortly. I'm going to go ahead and ask one last question that we have here. Would the administration be willing to consider implementing a program devoted to addressing implicit bias? Again, this was something that was also discussed in the last town hall when we talked about microaggressions that students experience on our campus, whether it's in the classroom or from other students. So what is our administration doing to tackle that?
Dr. Richardson, will you tell them what you're doing and how it starts at the top? Okay, I know what they're asking for, but we've got to get our core leadership team on the same page first.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. So one of the things that we're doing, or from my office, is we're doing a global approach toward training, right? Because we need to have the kind of training and exposure to the things that create fracture in society, right? To make them have folks present to the kind of things that actually are the definition of implicit bias. And then I'll also say, one of the things that our president holds us accountable to is not these incremental steps, right? We're actually trying to do things on scale. So the accountability that our president, President Blake, has us identified with doesn't mean that we can take 10 weeks to become present to the moment. In our leadership, we need to be able to have impactful tactics and tools in order to support our students, sustain our enrollment, and grow our graduation and our impact regionally and beyond. And I say that, and I actually have to leave this meeting to go do one of the initiatives that we're doing for this greater good. So I apologize and thank you, President. You can take over now.
What is also important is that we're going to start with implicit bias training at the top.
Yes.
Okay, at the top. Okay, and so yes, we'll work with faculty to spread it across the university, but first things first is that I've got to make sure that the leadership team understands what this means. Otherwise, we again will be stabbing blindly, you know, what some of the issues are. Thank you very much, Eva.
I actually would like to chime in and make a comment just to recognize that while there are overarching initiatives and efforts, that faculty themselves are an intentional lot of people who, though it might be, it isn't public knowledge, but faculty are presently and have been engaged in many conversations at program levels, at college levels, in dialogue, in individual practice and reflection of their pedagogy, of their own beliefs and actions. And so while, yes, transparently, we need to, through initiatives, address and bring forth the dialogue and training and reflection about implicit bias, it's critical to recognize that a lot of that is already happening, that faculty are looking inward very mindfully about what we do and how we teach and reach students. So I just felt compelled to take a moment to share that sometimes we don't know all that's happening in our preparation to be better faculty for our students.
Are there any other comments from our administration before I call this town hall to an end?
Yes. Hi.
Hello, Ms. Morales.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
And hello to all the students. I was just listening to all the conversation. As you know, I act as the VP for Strategic Information Initiatives and Technology. So I'm moving a lot of different initiatives at a higher level, but I am definitely extremely concerned with all your concerns. And I'm listening as a student that I was, as the only Hispanic woman actually working in a very difficult environment, which was at NASA for many years. And all these conversations that we're having and that you're bringing out forward are incredible. This is building actually leadership and many characters to many of the students. So I'm very pleased to hear that. And I'm really concerned because I went through many issues of different type of discrimination at many levels, even being as a woman, being a Hispanic again, a brown student, if you will, a brown employee for many years. This is something that it takes some time and mindful understanding from obviously the administration and also the students to know that, like some of the faculty mentioned, things are being done. Sometimes it takes some time to see the results, but it really, it concerns me because I would like to see more done, obviously. But I know that things, we need to take one step at a time, I think. And one of the things that I probably will work on, and I'll try to work with the student affairs to try to talk to the students about leadership and help in that regard. In that regards, having gone through many issues like this. And I just wanted to really tell all the students that, you know, I have overcome a lot of things and things that are extremely difficult and complicated to talk. But conversations are very welcome in this university. And that's one of the reasons that I took this position, because I want to make sure that that my voice was heard, like all of you, and I think they are. So we need to continue the conversation very mindfully. And again, it does concern me because sometimes it touches to parts of a personal life, right? And I just want to tell you that my door is open. My email is open. If anybody has any concern or want to talk about something in particular, that I'm welcome to hear. And again, I'm working as a strategic information initiatives. So, but I'll definitely be thinking about several initiatives to talk to the faculty about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Morales. Thank you everyone for coming and listening. So I hope this conversation gave students a better idea of where we stand as a university and what administration is doing to address your concerns. As I mentioned last time, I am committed to ensuring that this conversation continues and creates a tangible change in our UHCL community. Clearly, our university administration has some work to do something to protect Black lives. SGA will continue to provide a safe space where we can normalize these conversations and normalize the push and actual action toward making change. We will be hosting another town hall soon. Thank you for your support and your participation. Thank you to our wonderful moderator, Dr. Lisa Jones, and the entire UHCL core leadership team for prioritizing the students and what we need. Thank you to all those who shared their concerns and their experiences. We look forward to continuing this discussion throughout the school year. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on what's happening. And if you want to submit any lingering questions to any of our social media, that information is in the chat.